And retired United States Air Force Brigadier General and former F-22 pilot John Teichert. Good to talk to you, General. Thank you for coming in.
John, thanks for having me.
So there's talk now that Iran is reaching out through intermediaries to the United States, potentially Israel as well, to say, oh, let's try to dial back here and maybe come to some sort of a ceasefire agreement. Here's what the president said a short time ago. Listen here.
They'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal. And it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war. And they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
So clearly Iran is looking at the situation. They know that the Israeli Air Force can operate with impunity in the skies over Tehran, let alone the entire western part of the country. And now they're looking at the complete destruction of their nuclear program and maybe regime change as well. But do you trust a word the Ayatollah is saying at this point?
John, the Ayatollah had his chance to make a deal, and he failed to do so. And right now it's clear that they miscalculated the resolve of the Israeli people and the Israeli Defense Force. And right now, as the United States continues to support Israel, we are seeing them roll back ballistic missiles, air defenses, energy and economic sites, and now internal security apparatus elements in Iran, which is all creating instability that threatens the regime and the Ayatollah himself.
So General Jack Keane was on Fox earlier today, and he suggested that if this thing ends with the Fordo nuclear plant still intact, it's buried deep beneath the mountain, that the Ayatollah will just bide his time again, draw out the talks until he reconstitutes his nuclear program. And 3 to 4 years from now, we're going to be in the same boat that we are now. Now, granted, as you were saying earlier, 3 to 4 years is 3 to 4 years. But do you want to keep on watching this movie again and again?
John, I think we need to follow through with something that President Trump said, which is that they need to make a decision to destroy their nuclear program, or we will do it for them. And now that we're in this 4-day war, the only outcome that we must accept is that Iran unconditionally, immediately, and completely destroys their nuclear program, or they need to know that we will be willing to do so.
But they've always balked at that. I mean, I don't think they've had any intention of doing it. They keep on blaming the United States for it. Donald Trump was asked if potentially the United States might get involved with this. He didn't rule it out. Listen to what he said. Oh, sorry, I have to read this. He said, we're not involved in it. It's possible we could get involved, but we are not at this moment involved. But the Israelis and other members of the Israeli Defense Forces are saying what the U.S. really could do is bring to the table these massive ordnance penetrators, these so-called MOPs, these 30,000-pound bombs that could, I don't know how far into the ground they could get. You'd know better than I. But could the United States bring that to the table to destroy the Fordo plant?
John, I think right now that threat is causing the Ayatollah to consider coming to the negotiating table. And again, no doubt that we must eliminate Iran's nuclear program. We have the physical capability to do so, but based on these strikes that are causing continued distress within Iranian society, there's a chance that the Ayatollah is not going to be lasting for very long anyway.
So with that MOP, that huge bunker buster, is that enough to get to the actual enrichment plant buried deep beneath that mountain? Some people say it's a half-mile deep.
It is, John. Those 30,000-pound bombs were designed and then tested specifically to be able to do so. Typically, a B-2 bomber would drop 2 of them. One would follow the other, and that would get it deep enough to do something like destroy Fordo.
So one would hit first, make a massive hole, then the other one, almost like Robin Hood splitting the arrow, would go in after it and get to the facility deep underground.
That's exactly right. And we tested that capability against a deep and hardened target in 2013, and it was successful.
All right. So one other point, and that is that Donald Trump apparently has taken off the table, at least for the moment, Israel taking out the Ayatollah. I think the idea is he wants to see change come from within. We had the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. on at the top of the program, who said something similar, that it's not for Israel to decide who leads Iran. But Israel did take out the leader of Hezbollah, took out several leaders of Hamas. So why not take out the Ayatollah?
John, I think that once you do something like that, you set off a chain of events, and you don't know if it's going to end up in a way that is favorable to Israeli and U.S. interests. The reason the Ayatollah came to the negotiating table 2 months ago was that the distress on the economic system in Iran is so bad right now that he was worried about regime survival. And with the strikes in the last 4 days on energy targets, economic targets, and internal security apparatus, that now it is creating conditions where that could bubble from within, which would be far more effective than us levying regime change upon them.
So if it does bubble from within, sometimes it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. If it bubbles from within, is that a good thing for the United States? Because there are some outside groups. There's the son of the Shah, who's out there. There's the former MEK, which is now the National Council for Resistance in Iran, which most people in Iran do not like. So is it better that it comes from within rather than from without?
John, I think that from within, the democratic elements, the voice of the people of Iran, is far more likely to be considered in the outcome than if we made the decapitation move to begin with.
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. Certainly, Israel is not letting up, and Iran's running out of things to try to discourage Israel from doing it. So there may be some sort of inflection point here soon. Brigadier General John Teichert, good to talk to you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.